What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. I promised this one a while ago, 4 months to be precise, but never went through with it. I was busy with some other stuff and just delayed this one. Since I never go back and watch WWE from 2014, it wasn't on my mind at all. Now, as you may know, this is a part of the Shield series. The last video was this one. Go check it out if you have it and if you're interested. And I will make something eventually about Roman and how hated he was or something. Whatever, we're just gonna make some Roman-related video eventually. I don't make videos on this time period often on purpose. There's a reason why I don't come around to this time period. It's not because I don't like it. There is some good stuff here and there, but I just don't like going too often. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, with that said, just to let you know, this one was kind of violent. They obviously had to stay within the limits of the PG rating, and that kind of hurts it. Despite this, it's one of the best stories of the decade, and if they got more leeway, it would have been even better. Dean, he became the most over babyface on the roster, no exaggeration. Daniel Bryan was gone, CM Punk was gone. And Cena, it was a mixed reaction, but Dean, he was the guy that got a mostly positive reaction from the crowd. He was number one at this point. One thing I really loved about this feud was the fact that whenever Dean saw Seth, he'd want to kill him. It makes sense because this is the guy that betrayed him, and every chance he got, he would kick his ass. It wasn't like they stood in the middle of the ring facing each other and talking promos or whatever. Whenever Seth was within a couple of feet away, he would kick his ass. That's one thing I really loved about this feud because it makes sense. It's not like, oh, I hate you, then they stand in the middle of the ring together looking at each other and talking normally. No. This one was different. It makes sense that Dean would go after Seth like that. Seth Rollins, on the other hand, he did a lot just to get this lifestyle. He had to stab his brothers in order to join the Authority. So obviously, it was going to be a good story. Right now, let's get into it. As you may know, the previous video ended when the Shield broke up. You know, June 2nd, 2014 episode of Raw. Well, this one, we're going to start off the week following it. On the June 9th, 2014 episode of Raw, 2/3 of the Shield addressed the events of last week. You know, betrayal. Before they did, however, the duo destroyed two future world champions and Heath Slater. Dean calmed himself down and finally spoke. He mentioned the Shield's past and how there was always a cancer within Seth Rollins. The guy was just chomping at the bit to finally get his hands on the sellout, simply put. He called Seth scum, and meanwhile, the scum was watching from a distance. Dean said that when Rollins comes out, they're gonna jump him. Roman, though, it seemed like he had a bigger issue with Randy Orton and Triple H rather than Seth. Later that night, Seth Rollins finally revealed why he did what he did. He got new entrance music as expected, a beta version of his final theme, and the fans chanted, "You sold out," as Rollins tried to explain things from his perspective. He believed that wasn't a big deal because it was best for business. He called himself the creator of the Shield, and not only that, but he said that it wasn't wrong of him to destroy it because, well, he created it. He said that Dean wasn't smart enough to pull this off, and Roman, well, he's worthless without Seth. And both of those men owe him every ounce of success they achieved. Michael Cole tried telling Seth that the Shield was about 3 men, not one, but Seth, on the other hand, didn't understand how this was a surprise. Like, he didn't understand how this betrayal was a surprise. He learned from Evolution that in order to be successful in the business, you have to evolve. You have to adapt. You sold out chants intensified, and he responded stating that he bought in. He didn't sell it. He bought in. He bought into the evolution of Seth Rollins, and if anything, it took guts to do what he did last week. But everyone is fixated at the fact that he stabbed his brothers in the back. And while that may be true to the other two, they were just business partners to him. Simply put, he severed a business relationship, and now everyone should start believing in Seth Rollins. Before he left, however, he teased the Shield, you know, Dean and Roman. But that fight wasn't to be because the Wyatt family came out. That's a whole other story. On that week's SmackDown, Seth once again stuck it to Dean by making his presence felt during his match with Bray Wyatt. This distraction ended up costing Dean a spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match for the titles. He, however, returned the favor on Raw, interfering in Seth's match with Dolph Ziggler. He promised that this wasn't going to be over until he gets his hands on that smug, corporate, extremely punchable face of his. He then challenged the Architect to come down and fight, but he declined. Well, he didn't decline. Papa Triple H gave him some bad news. During that match, Dean did kind of get his hands on Seth, but he got counted out, and so he lost focus, and the Architect ran away. At this point, I don't think everyone believed this was his new ring attire, but the next night it was basically confirmed. I believe at the time they were making fun of him, they were mentioning Jimmy Wang Yang. That's what I remember from that time period. Once again, on this night, main event, Dean brawled with Seth when Kane made the save. But he managed to get the best of them. And a little side note, during this time period, main events aired live on the WWE Network, and I'd compare it to Sunday Night Heat pre-SmackDown in a way. Obviously, things were crazier on Heat, but main event featured some stars such as John Cena, The Undertaker, so there's that. Seth debuted his new gear on SmackDown in a match, or matches, against Kofi Kingston. And he once again got the best of Dean later that night. Once again, for the third or fourth or fifth, God knows how many times, Dean stalked Seth and return the favor on Raw. That's how it was. Seth assaults Dean with a little bit of help, and then the following week, the following episode, Dean returns the favor. It was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was a little preview. It wasn't like they were fighting for 5 minutes or something. It was always like a 20-second brawl, and someone would come and stop or whatever. That's how it was. The lunatic demanded a spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match and threatened to screw up the entire pay-per-view if he isn't inserted into the match. Rollins, though, he was fearful. He was paranoid and asked Hunter to just add him to the ladder match. The game obliged but warned Seth, telling him that if anything happens, he's to blame. Now about the match, good. I liked that at the time. It seemed like Dean was ready to kill Seth and take that briefcase, and watching the match live, it was so damn dramatic. Seth was suffering, Kofi almost won the damn thing, and the emphasis was more on Dean and Seth as expected. Ambrose made it seem like the only thing he lived for was to make Seth's life a living hell. And just when he had his fingertips on the briefcase, Kane from out of nowhere interfered, tombstone Ambrose, which gave way to the Architect, who unhooked the briefcase. The crowd was silenced upon the match ending, as they really want Dean to win. There's nothing to support about this slime ball. Basically in kayfabe. What's there to like about Seth? Not much. I might add, this wasn't like the cool Seth of 2015 or anything like that, the guy that could back it up. The Authority obviously came out to flump, and Seth himself showed off the briefcase the next night in a very arrogant way. Dean from a distance interrupted and informed the Architect that this thing is far from over. He told Seth that every time he attempts to cash in, he's gonna be there to ruin everything. It reminds me of this scene.
You in the shower. I'm gonna be there.
Later that night, Seth tried to do just that, cash in the briefcase. Triple H and Kane were trying to make Seth as champion a reality, but Dean crashed the party as expected. Once again, the following week, Rollins had the title in his reach when Dean made good on that promise. So these problems led to a matchup at Battleground. Heading into the event, the Authority managed to send Dean to a medical facility. So at the pay-per-view, the match barely commenced. Ambrose beforehand tried attacking his former brother, and Hunter essentially canceled the match and kicked Dean out of the building. Seth wanted to accept his victory via forfeit, and he got what he wanted. Commentary team were talking about something else when Dean from out of nowhere ambushed Seth. They brawled. Well, I'm sorry, they didn't brawl. Dean whooped Seth's ass inside and outside the crowd. A very angry Triple H walked down there and forcefully separated Ambrose from Rollins. They tried carrying him out of the ringside area when Seth tried getting a piece himself. Once they got the situation in control, Triple H raised Seth's arm as the fans booed. About a half hour later, Seth had a bad feeling. He told security he's okay, hence there being no protection at this point. From out the trunk, Dean emerged with a pipe, and once again it was a game of cat and mouse. Seth tried running away, he pushed him away, and managed to get in the car and drive right the hell out of there. Since both men had yet to resolve their differences, Triple H booked the match for SummerSlam on the August 4th, 2014 episode of Raw. But in order to determine the stipulation for the match, they decided to have 2 beat-the-clock matches. Basically, whoever beats their opponent in the shortest amount of time gets to pick the stipulation. Dean managed to beat Del Rio in about 16 minutes, and Seth, meanwhile, was set to face RVD. Just as Van Dam was prepared to go at it, he was replaced. Yep, he was replaced. Seth's actual opponent was Heath Slater, and the Architect was on cloud 9. He gave Heath the chance to just walk away, but he didn't go through with it. Dean decided to come out and watch the match in person. As for the fans, despite the slim chances of Heath Slater winning, they actually believed he had a chance. Ambrose, on the other hand, was trying to piss off Seth, who was kind of busy in the ring. This went way better than expected, as Slater managed to score a W against the Architect, meaning Dean gets to choose the stipulation. What did he choose? He chose a lumberjack match. Why? Because Seth always runs away, or he gets his parents to do something about his battles. Dean promised that at SummerSlam August 17th, Mr. Money in the Bank goes broke. Seth, though, he was looking at the positive. No matter what happens at the event, he still has this, the briefcase, and it essentially means he's the future of the company. By the end of the night, the sellout stood tall once again. He humiliated Dean and made an example out of him. But, as you all know, Dean always gets the last laugh. It's well known. On the final Raw before SummerSlam, Dean Ambrose took advantage of Hulk Hogan's birthday and hid inside one of the gifts. Mr. Money in the Bank was sort of paranoid, but he brushed it off. It was then where Dean took advantage and they made their way to the crowd. Seth ran like the wind. Dean gave the network a little promotion once again, and he was ready to get his money's worth. About the match at SummerSlam, tremendous. It was lively. I watched it a couple of weeks ago, and I suggest you watch it if you're bored. Not a second of dull action. It was energetic. The crowd was fully active, and they crammed everything in there. It was chaotic in the very best way possible, and that's what makes this match awesome. This might be the greatest lumberjack match in history, which is not saying much, to be honest. But yes, it has to be the very best. Dean was just eager to kick ass while Seth, he tried running away. Corporate Kane demanded the Lumberjacks do something about the two in the crowd. JBL was whining and complaining, and Seth found himself back in the ringside area when Ambrose jumped off the turnbuckle and dove onto everybody. The fans were cheering, and it was entertaining. Dean hit the curb stomp in the ring, but then Kane broke the pinfall and chaos ensued. Rollins took advantage of the havoc to win the match. It was such an FUN match, simply put. Time well spent. But despite the results, the feud had yet to conclude. The next night on Raw, Seth discussed the victory at SummerSlam in a state of ecstasy, but Dean quickly cooled him down with a bucket of ice. And this moment when he throws the bucket, it just gets me. It turned into a one-sided melee, and Seth was raging. He wanted to do something about this, but he just didn't know how to go about it. Hunter calmed him down and booked him in a SummerSlam rematch for the main event, but it's going to be the fans' choice. They get to choose a match, and when Seth gets the job done, they'll be to blame for what happens because they chose the match in the first place. The choices were there, and honestly, I think it's dumb. It's not a big deal, and I don't really care, but when you look at it like this, they should be a lot distinctive. Anyways, false count anywhere. The match was full of drama, and it definitely eclipsed the SummerSlam match the previous night. That's saying something in itself because that bout in itself was great. This one was pay-per-view quality, no doubt about it. There was weapons at their disposal, they did some cool spots, and near the end it seemed like the ball was in Dean's court. He had a burst of energy, momentum, and took advantage of every second. The Las Vegas crowd was all in on this guy, and watching this, I remember why I liked Dean Ambrose, the character. John Moxley's good in general, but I'm talking about Dean Ambrose. This was 2014, by the way. He was unpredictable, energetic, kind of violent, entertaining. That's why I loved him. He could work in the ring, he had character, he had the mic skills, everything was there. He was my favorite bar none. Unfortunately for him, Kane caught him with a chokeslam on the announce table, and he then revealed a stack of cinder blocks. Seth hit the curb stomp there, and the ref put a stop to the match. As expected, Dean went away to film the great 12 rounds 3. I actually watched it a couple of years ago. I didn't get bored, to be honest. I might make something about it on the second channel eventually, so yeah. In Dean's absence, Roman took his place for a bit before suffering an injury himself. He suffered the injury the week of Night of Champions, which meant Seth was basically the winner via forfeit. Since he didn't have an opponent that night, the Architect issued an open challenge to anybody. An angry, no, that's not the right word, a splenetic Dean Ambrose emerged. He whooped Seth's ass, simply put, and security had to once again separate Dean from Seth. Not from each other, but Dean from Seth. They failed miserably, and it took him a while to take control of the situation. They once again carried him out of there and threw him out of the arena. Later that night, Seth tried to capitalize on the moment. You know, Brock Lesnar and John Cena's match. And seeing as Brock was knocked out was the perfect moment. John Cena did something about it this time. I mean, he did have a reason to because Seth cost him the title, so there's that. So he's got issues with two men. The next night on Raw, Dean Ambrose took matters into his own hands. Since he was so fed up with the Authority protecting their little golden child, he was going to sit in the middle of the ring until his demands are met. Instead, John Cena came out and Dean was bothered. He didn't want him there and he warned him. Cena wanted to relate to Ambrose, seeing it as they hate Rollins. He mentioned how he was about to beat Lesnar until that jackass showed up and he wanted a piece of Rollins too. This irked Dean and it almost turned into a fight between those two. The Authority put a halt to this and Triple H was talking about how he makes the decisions when Cena and Ambrose refused to listen and so went after Seth. They made their way to the back. The Architect took a page out of GTA and stole a car to run the hell out of there. Funny enough, later that night, he started another fight. He attacked Dean, and so Dean responded in the only way Dean could. Triple H then threw him into a room, opting not to kick him out because the $2 security won't do anything about it at the end of the day. Later on, he escaped once again, and he was hiding under Kane's little surprise. He once again got his hands on Rollins. Not for long, though, obviously. He was still craving the jackass after 4 months. Since every fight sees Seth run away, Dean decided to steal the briefcase. J&J security failed to find the lunatic fringe, but he would make an appearance later that night. The man stole a bunch of shirts in order to hold a clearance sale in the middle of the damn ring. He's vibing, he's having fun when J&J tried to put a stop to it. They didn't know what to do and walked to the back. Seth decided to finally come out, with security as expected, and the lunatic fringe asked if those were the rosebuds from the previous week before letting go of the briefcase. Seth opened it and boom, green slime. Dean had this look on his face like, that happened. Seth would get the last laugh at the end of the night though. Since Cena and Ambrose had an enormous amount of hatred for Seth Rollins, they were booked in a handicap match against the Authority the following week. Ambrose left to get a hot dog, and he wouldn't come back until after the match with a hot dog cart. He sprayed some ketchup and mustard onto Orton and Kane, got his hands on Seth for the 100th time, yet he still wasn't satisfied. He got a hold of Seth's wiener, and Triple H had to walk out and book Cena and Ambrose in a match with the winner getting Seth Rollins later that night at Hell in a Cell. After hearing this announcement, Dean made his mark with Dirty Deeds to end Raw on top. The following week, though, everything changed. Despite putting them in a big tag team match, the Authority, they weren't satisfied at all, so that Hell in a Cell match was pushed forward to later that night, and it was a contract on a pole match. Loser gets Randy Orton inside Hell in a Cell. During the match, Orton interfered, Seth, Kane, all of them came out, and both competitors forgot what type of situation they were in for a short time. Once the dust settled, Dean stood at top of the turnbuckle and took a jab at Cena before grabbing that contract. This meant Cena faces Orton and Seth faces Dean. All of those matches inside Hell in a Cell. Before the match, Mick Foley made an appearance to visit an old friend. His opinion on this whole thing was Seth would win in any scenario against Dean. But Hell in a Cell isn't just any normal scenario. Foley showed some emotion that's attributed to that night. He was yelling, he was shouting, he was mentioning his mental trauma and all that stuff. Dean, though, he wasn't worried about adding any psychological scars. He just wanted to kick Seth Rollins' ass. The Architect thought these two were crazy because in his mind, it's not about how crazy you could get, it's about how smart you are. That's what he thought. Foley offered his rebuttal, and he said that he looks at his life in two parts, pre-cell and post-cell. So it doesn't matter how smart you are inside that cell, part of you is going to go away afterwards, I guess. Dean almost got him some of Seth once again, but to no avail. There was, however, some action at the end of the night that saw Seth stand tall, so there's that. Now about that cell match, at the time it was awesome. They started the match on top of the cell, which was something that wasn't seen in years. There was this spot which is reminiscent of Mankind in 1998, and I should note that it was the first cell spot in about 14 years or something. This match felt like the culmination of the feud. I thought it was Dean's night as he lost every other match, and not only that, but it seemed like Seth was gonna get his inside the cell. It was like he's going to hell, he's gonna get his ass whooped, and Dean's gonna stand tall. He brought out some cinder blocks trying to return the favor, and the most memorable moment was probably when he told Seth, "You stabbed me in the back, you son of a..." Then, when he tried the curb stop, Bray Wyatt emerged. That moment, I was annoyed. It annoyed me. I was like, he's losing again. Seth then took advantage and won the whole thing. Damn it. It irked me at the time, to be honest. I really wanted Dean to win this one. It would have made sense. It was a great feud, and it would have ended in the most poetic way possible, with Dean returning the favor and Seth paying for his sins, but they ended in the trashiest way possible. Like Bray Wyatt this time, they were always giving him to these top guys whenever there's nothing to do or whenever they wanted a placeholder feud or something like that. Sure, this whole thing transitioned into a Wyatt feud, but that in itself did nothing for anybody. Dean had the most momentum in late 2014. I don't get why they had the Wyatt feud. That was underwhelming in itself, so there's that. But yes, awesome match at the time. It's just the ending hurts it a lot. And that's the feud. Personally, I like this. Before making this video, I had a different opinion of it, but after watching these segments and moments again for the video, yeah, it was cool. It was cooler than I thought it was. Like, Dean, he was a madman. Seth Rollins was this smug guy that you just wanted to punch. He was unlikable in every way possible. He stabbed his best friends in the back in order to just move a little bit ahead in his career. Dean, like I said, this guy, he was awesome at the time. He had a lot of momentum. I don't get why they didn't have him end the feud on top. But yes, I like this feud. It brought some entertaining matches, some entertaining moments. The brawls, that made sense in my eyes. Like, Dean, it's logical for him to just go and attack Seth every moment he sees him. So, yeah. Anyways, what do you guys think of this feud? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a curb stomp on the like button and perhaps a dirty deeds on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.